Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. As the war grinds on, Ukraine faces fresh Russian advances in the east, while Europe deepens its role in Kyiv's security and future. To help us understand what this moment means for Ukraine and the wider world, we're now joined by Volodymyr Yermolenko, editor-in-chief of UkraineWorld.org. Thanks so much for joining us here on TVP World.
Hello.
Volodymyr, I want to begin with some of these latest reports of these terrible attacks that have come overnight, wave after wave of ballistic bombardment of Kyiv. Several districts are on fire. We know at the moment around 3 people have been killed. How is the city coping, and what does this tell us of the current state of things, Russia's unwillingness to actually come to the table? Tell us your thoughts here.
Well, the night was indeed very, very loud and very horrible, and there were just missiles attack on residential buildings. I actually just woke up because we didn't sleep a big part of the night. We see that there was a destruction of one of the residential buildings, and we now have reports about 8 people who have died, and probably there will be more because usually there are people under the rubbles and the rescue works. There are also reports that Russians attacked the trains, the station trains, but the passenger trains, and this also shows that they are more and more just attacking, just hunting the civilians. They don't care about the military targets. What I also know is that in like frontline cities like Kherson, which we visit quite often, that there is a real hunt for civilians, and Russian drones are just controlling the road that leads to the city and to some other frontline cities. So if you go just to visit the city on a passenger car, on a civilian car, you can actually be hit and be killed. So This is what's happening. We don't see any willingness of Russians to negotiate, to find peace. And this is the video that you are now looking at. It's just downtown Kyiv. It's in the center. It's not far away from the railway station. So you can see those videos, unfortunately.
Yeah, and this, obviously, as you said, the images are striking. I mean, we know as well, we have a report of certain casualties, also children involved. You said there's rubble. Unfortunately, maybe that casualty list will rise. Also disturbing is the concept here of a recent also drone attacks that have left, I think, over 100,000 homes without power. So how vulnerable is Ukraine's energy grid at the moment? I mean, we're still in the summer, but we're leaning into autumn. How resilient is Ukraine's energy structure in all this?
Well, look, Russians were trying to basically kill the Ukrainian energy system since 2022. And basically, if you remember, all the autumns since 2022 were the autumns where Russians were targeting the Ukrainian energy system, which again says that they're waging the war against civilians, against ordinary people, not only against the Ukrainian army. So far, the Ukrainian energy sector was quite resilient. So despite all the current shortages, we still survived. So Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian economy was still coping with this. But what will happen next, we don't know, because Russians use new technologies, Russians are adapting, Russians are, improving their drones, improving their missiles. And as you can see, the attacks become more and more massive, and these are combinations of attacks of missiles and drones, and they are always, if this combination of attacks happen, they're always a challenge for Ukrainian air defense system. So far it was resilient, but we don't know how basically Ukraine is prepared for the next attacks as well.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of attacks, Volodymyr, I want to ask you, I mean, we hear reports of the last sort of 24 hours that there are Russia's forces have advanced into Dnipro, into that region, conflicting reports of a village or two, a few kilometers. How significant is that for the balance of things, especially looking at the wider Donbas here? How concerned are you?
Well, I'm obviously concerned because the advance is there. You know, in 2023, we were talking about possible Ukrainian counteroffensive, and there was a Ukrainian counteroffensive, and unfortunately, it was a big failure for various reasons, for the mistakes of Ukrainians, but also for the shortage of supplies from our Western partners. And now we are mostly in defense. But look, if you look at the figures in the past 3 years after that first, months of the full-scale invasion, in the past 3 years, Russians have occupied only 1% of the Ukrainian territory. That can show you how fast they are moving. So they're not moving fast. But the problem is that they are moving faster. And this is also a problem for Ukrainian defense, for European defense. If you have watched recently, there were a few weeks ago Russian kind of a big advance near Dobropilla, but it was stopped. It turned into a trap kind of for Russian forces, so Ukrainians stopped it. But it also a question whether these breakthrough advances will not happen more and more. And as you said, the Russians are approaching and basically are already in some parts of the Dnipro or Dnipropetrovsk region, which is also not a very good sign because Dnipro region, the city is called Dnipro, is not figuring in these Russians' dreams about, their territories. As you know, they annexed 5 Ukrainian regions. They brought it into the Russian constitution, but the Dnipro or Dnipropetrovsk region is not there still. So they can actually say, okay, the Dnipro region is also part of Russia, and this will again even complicate the idea of negotiations because of course Ukraine is not recognizing that these 5 regions are part of Russia. This is a big part of the Ukrainian territory, 20% of Ukrainian territory.
Yeah, and also just to illustrate also to our viewers, we don't have a map now, but mentioning even if those small, let's say, as you said, they're moving slow, but they seem to be moving faster, the Russians. If they go further into that Dnipropetrovsk area, I mean, it seems almost that could potentially flank into Donetsk. Is that a danger here? Is that something that could potentially happen? How are Ukrainian armed forces preparing for this, if at all?
Yeah, I think strategically Russians really want to capture the remaining parts of the Donetsk region. I will remind to your listeners, to your viewers, that Ukraine controls at least a big number of like 4 big fortresses, as they are called. The cities Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, Konstantinivka, and Drushkivka, which we visit quite often, and they're kind of vibrant cities still, but Russians want them, and Ukrainians are not going to go away, of course. But Russians say, okay, we will end this war if we get the full control of Donbas, which is of course a lie because they're not going to end this war anyway. So they want Ukrainians to move away from these fortress cities. Ukrainians will not move away because this will weaken very much the Ukrainian defense, but Russians are trying, to encircle it a little bit and to go from the south and to go from the north. I can tell you that it's very difficult to get to kind of to conquer a big city in the current war because the sky is more and more controlled by the drones from both sides, and it's very difficult to capture the city. So what Russians are doing, they're trying to kind of use this old technique of a siege. And I mentioned Kherson for a simple reason that, for example, if the drones are controlling the roads that are leading to the city, like Kherson or any other city, the city becomes, of course, less and less lively, as I can say, less and less supplied. So there are lots of difficulties that can arise. The hunger can arise, and people can move away. So I think this is their tactics, and as I said, this is a tactics to frighten, to intimidate civilians.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important for security guarantees for Ukraine. I mean, this is a topic that's been bouncing around. I mean, at this point in time also, we hear that Vladimir Putin has ruled out any NATO troops on Ukrainian territory. He won't accept that. At the same time, we're talking about what else security guarantees could be. In your mind, what do you think? What kind of troops could he accept, if any? Like, would that be Turkey? Would that be other nations? Do you think Vladimir Putin would agree to anyone here at this point, or is he just stalling?
I don't understand why should we think about what Vladimir Putin thinks about the security guarantees. I mean, security guarantees is precisely something that will prevent Putin from attacking, and it's not the Putin that we need to consult with. We need to create some architecture that will just make Russia unable or very costly to attack. And therefore, it's about troops, but also it's about treaties. It's about arms. It's about very different things. It's also about economic warfare. It's about new sanctions. It's about many different things. And what happens now with Trump, this go back and forth, is of course does not help Ukrainian security guarantees and Ukrainian security. But what is clear is that if Ukraine doesn't have a real security guarantees, and I'm not saying about treaties right now or papers, I'm saying about the material stuff, more air defense, more troops on the ground, maybe even nuclear protection, because Russia is a nuclear state, and all this war had been happening because Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons in 1994 in exchange of security guarantees that didn't work in Budapest Memorandum. So it's a very complex idea, but if Ukraine doesn't get them, so we should expect Russia will advance in Ukraine, will advance into NATO members like Poland or Baltic states. It's inevitable because this is Russian big ambition to kind of restore Soviet Union and then restore control of a part of Eastern Europe. They're looking their future in decades ahead.
Just also briefly, I mean, we already talked about the mixed signals coming from Donald Trump. That's speculation at this point. But at the same time, I'm also curious at something fixed that we have, for instance, very much about this concept of Russia stepping out and not being party anymore to this anti-torture agreement. I mean, what does that signal to you? Just briefly at the end. I mean, is this an admission of war crimes? I mean, this is something significant that's happened in the last sort of 24 hours. Just briefly give us your take on that latest announcement.
Well, I think it's very easy. I think Russia is just ignoring international law, and Russia uses this war to break the international order, to break the international law. So it goes against the very idea of international law that the law should limit violence. I think Russia is using violence to limit law and to install a kind of a lawlessness as a possibility to do whatever it wants. And the sooner, I mean, the Western partners of Ukraine, primarily Europe. I'm thinking about Europe. I'm thinking about responsibility of Europe primarily. The sooner it will understand this, the better.
All right, so and we'll obviously be waiting for that. Look, thank you so much. We'll close there. Volodymyr Yermolenko, appreciate all your insights and stay safe there in Kyiv. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but there's much more coming up right here on TVP World, so don't go away. Goodbye.